Something happened at Cleveland Browns minicamp this week, and I genuinely don't think the broader football conversation is absorbing the full weight of it yet. And I'm not talking about the stat lines, though we're going to get there. I'm talking about something that's harder to quantify, but ultimately matters more. I've been watching quarterbacks come through this league for a long time. Long enough to develop a pretty reliable internal alarm system for when a person is performing confidence versus actually carrying it. That alarm has been very quiet watching Shedeur Sanders these past 2 days. And the silence of it is telling me something important. Let me take you into that press conference first, because I think it's the right place to start if you actually want to understand what we're watching unfold in Cleveland right now. Shedeur Sanders walks in, sits down, and within the first few exchanges, it becomes clear that this is not a room interested in having an honest conversation with him. These reporters came with an architecture, a strategy. Every question was engineered to produce a specific kind of answer, something that could be clipped, reframed, a phrase that creates separation from Watson or hints at frustration. Anything that suggests the internal pressure of this competition is beginning to show. That is how these things work. I am not criticizing the reporters for it because that is part of the job. But I am telling you, I know what a loaded room looks like, and that room was loaded. And Shedeur Sanders walked through it like it was empty. Not in the mechanical, corporate, media-trained way where every answer sounds like it was pre-approved in a back room 30 minutes earlier. That's not what this was. It was something different. It was more like he had already fully processed the situation before he sat down, and the pressure in the room simply had nowhere to enter. The questions landed, and he answered them from somewhere calm, somewhere grounded. Whatever threshold of pressure would be required to visibly move this person, the assembled NFL media corps could not reach it. That is a data point I am not ignoring. Now let's get into what happened on the field, because the field is where reputations actually get built or destroyed. Day 2 of mandatory minicamp. Shedeur Sanders completed the significant majority of his throws. 2 misses on the day. Accuracy sitting comfortably above 80% across these sessions. And before anyone uses that number to start drawing premature conclusions in either direction, I need you to understand the context it comes from, because context transforms the meaning of numbers entirely. Offensive coordinator Todd Monken is not running Shedeur through an open gym where a quarterback can cherry-pick timing throws and manufacture highlight moments for the cameras. What Monken is building is something much more deliberate and much more demanding. Short concepts, intermediate timing routes, quarterback-receiver rhythm built inside real traffic against real coverage, with real defenders trying to disrupt the timing of every single decision. There are no artificially clean pockets in this program. There are no engineered deep shots designed to produce a clip that trends on social media by sundown. What Monken is constructing, systematically and without shortcuts, is the deep mechanical and cognitive foundation that a quarterback will need when September arrives and the games mean everything, and the margin for error has shrunk to almost nothing. The kind of preparation you cannot fake and cannot rush. The work that never makes the highlight reel, but absolutely shows up on 3rd and 7 in the 4th quarter when the field compresses and every decision has to arrive before the defense can adjust. That is what these sessions are about, and I want you to sit with the implication of that for a moment, because I think people are moving past it too quickly. Organizations do not build that kind of structured, layered, long-term development program around a player they have mentally placed in a backup role. They do not allocate that quality of coaching time and organizational investment towards someone they see as depth. This staff has decided at some meaningful level that Shedeur Sanders is worth the long investment. That is not a guarantee of anything. The competition is open, and I mean genuinely open, not front office speak open. But that kind of deliberate coaching commitment is a signal. And if you have watched enough professional football to know how these organizations actually operate, you understand that signals like that tend to mean exactly what they appear to mean when you read them honestly. The coaching feedback has been specific in a way that matters. They are noting measurably faster footwork, cleaner movement through his progressions, a compressed decision window between snap and throw. I want to slow down on that for a second because footwork in a quarterback is one of those topics that gets name-dropped constantly and almost never actually explained. It's not about how fast your legs are moving. It is about the relationship between where your feet land, the timing of your hip rotation, the formation of your throwing platform, and whether all of that mechanical alignment is happening in sync with where your eyes are reading the coverage. A quarterback whose footwork is right does not just complete passes at a higher rate. He arrives at the right receiver at the right moment because his body has already positioned itself correctly before the conscious decision has even fully registered. The mechanics precede the thought. That is what repetition at this level is trying to build, that unconscious correctness, and it is earned only through volume and focus sustained over time. When coaches identify specific, documentable improvement in that area, they are not distributing participation trophies. They are pointing to real mechanical advancement that will directly translate to performance when the games carry weight. When someone asked Shedeur about his development, his answer was almost arrestingly simple. He said he has made becoming the best quarterback alive a constant internal reference point, not an aspiration he revisits when motivation is high, a constant reference point. So when something in his game needs work, he sees it, he does the work, and the improvement shows up on film. That is the entire cycle. Identify the gap, close the gap, verify the results on tape. No inspirational framework, no motivational language built for consumption, just a clean, functional description of the actual process by which a quarterback who is serious about his craft gets better. I found that answer more revealing than almost anything else said in that room. But the moment I keep returning to from that press conference, the one that genuinely stopped me when I first processed it, came when Shedeur was asked where the most significant growth had come from since the Austin offseason program began. His coaches had already been discussing his development publicly, so the question was following an established thread. He could have gone technical, could have named a mechanical improvement, could have given the room the quarterback development vocabulary they were expecting and moved on. Instead, he said something that essentially translated to, "I told you what I was going to do. I committed to it publicly. And now you're watching it become real." Read that again carefully, because I want you to understand what he actually chose to say in that moment. He did not answer a football development question with a football development answer. He answered it with a statement about personal integrity, about the relationship between your word and your actions being one of the most foundational things a person can construct for themselves. He chose a press conference in the middle of a genuine starting job competition, with cameras and reporters and professional observers watching his every reaction, to say that. The vast majority of veteran quarterbacks would not go there in that setting. He just did. Without apparent hesitation, without any visible calculation about whether it was the right thing to say. It simply came out because it was what was actually true for him. Then the conversation arrived at his relationship with Todd Monken, and this is where things got genuinely interesting to me as someone who has watched a lot of quarterback development play out at the professional level. You're expecting technical language, scheme concepts, protection adjustments, film study process, the vocabulary of the position. Instead, Shedeur opens with one word: relationship. He talks about not wanting to let his coaches down. He describes this specific internal weight he carries when a throw misses in practice, even when no external reaction seems to register that anything went wrong, because walking back toward the sideline after an incomplete pass means something different when the people around you genuinely matter to you personally. He processes the mistake differently because the relationship carries real emotional stakes for him. The error is not just a technical failure, it is a small failure toward a person he cares about. Think carefully about what that reveals, because that particular way of framing accountability, of internalizing a missed throw as a relational failure rather than purely a mechanical one, that is not the psychological architecture of a man locked in zero-sum competition against a teammate for a roster spot. That is someone who has attached his development directly to the human beings surrounding him. He is not in a strategic war against Deshaun Watson for a depth chart position. He is in an entirely private, entirely personal war against the distance between who he is right now and who he has already decided he intends to become. And I want to explain carefully why that distinction matters so much, because it tends to get dismissed as soft when it is actually one of the clearest separators between quarterbacks who find their ceiling in this league and quarterbacks who spend 3 years wondering why their ceiling never seemed to move. The mental architecture you build around yourself under sustained pressure, that is the variable that ultimately determines everything else downstream. Not arm talent, not combined measurables, not draft position. The architecture of how you respond internally when a rep goes wrong, and the cameras are watching and the fan base is debating, and the man competing directly with you for the same job is 50 yards away in the same building watching too. Do you protect your ego in that moment? Shrink slightly from the weight of it? Quietly recalibrate your expectations? Or do you own the mistake cleanly and move forward without carrying it? The quarterbacks who last, who eventually lead franchises and build legacies in this league, tend to do the latter consistently and instinctively, without having to talk themselves into it. Shedeur Sanders is doing the latter, and he is doing it out loud, in public, without a single sentence that sounds rehearsed. There was also a moment in that press conference that I found genuinely sharp in how efficiently it was handled. A reporter asked Shedeur whether he planned to host his own separate off-season workout for receivers, or whether he would attend Deshaun Watson's. The question was constructed as a social wedge, a small but deliberate trap. You could see him register exactly what the question was doing the instant it arrived. He looked at the reporter and essentially questioned the framing itself before even engaging with the substance of it. Like, what do you mean, attend Deshaun's? The reporter tried to soften the setup when he realized it hadn't landed. Shedeur didn't give him the space to recover. He closed it down cleanly, without any visible edge, without any drama, with one simple statement: we are one team. Whatever happens, happens together. That answer sounds simple. It is actually more strategically sophisticated than it appears on the surface. The moment a receiver group begins fracturing along quarterback loyalty lines, some guys gravitating toward this quarterback's workouts, others building chemistry with that one, you have quietly poisoned the offensive culture before a single regular season snap has been played. Chemistry at the NFL level is not something that simply exists because talented players share a roster. It requires active, daily maintenance and protection. And here is a man who is actively competing for a starting position, fully aware that every possible edge matters in a genuine competition, consciously choosing to protect the cultural unity of a quarterback room he shares with his direct competition rather than exploit a politically useful opening that had just been handed to him on a silver platter. That is not optics management. That is leadership functioning as pure instinct. And the people inside that facility feel choices like that. They always do. Locker rooms have very accurate antennae for who is performing team-first language and who is actually living it. Now, I have to talk about Watson, because sitting here pretending the other half of this competition doesn't exist and doesn't carry real weight would be dishonest. Day 2 numbers. Watson completed 18 of 23 throws. That is a number that serves as a reminder of exactly why his athletic ceiling was once considered elite, why professional system experience is not a trivial factor, why this is not simply a formality playing out in slow motion on a practice field. I am not here to dismiss his ability or flatten his story into something convenient, but there was also an interception on day 2, which means back-to-back minicamp practice sessions in which Watson has thrown a pick during teamwork. Day 1 had 1, day 2 had 1, 2 consecutive sessions. And I want you to sit with the timing of that. This is a man trying to reclaim a starting role, while the person beside him in the competition is completing above 80% and receiving deliberate sustained development investment from the offensive coordinator of the franchise. Those are not isolated moments. Those are patterns forming across consecutive sessions. And professional football coaching staffs do not evaluate isolated moments. They document patterns across time. That is guaranteed. That is the job. I want to handle Watson's situation with the weight it deserves, because there is real human weight to it. A man trying to come back from 2 years of lost time, trying to prove that who he was before injury took everything away, still exists somewhere underneath the rust and the miles and the doubt that has genuine gravity. I feel that honestly. but I also cannot allow the human weight of his narrative to obscure what the competitive picture is communicating in real time, because that would be a form of dishonesty about what is actually happening on that field. The scoreboard of this competition is being updated in real time every single day, whether the broader conversation is paying close enough attention or not. There was also a detail around Watson's day one interception that I thought was quietly illuminating about the environment in Cleveland right now. There was some initial discrepancy in how that throw was logged in the tracking data, a numbers correction required after the fact. And what that detail tells me is that we are not watching a relaxed June check-in where coaches are going through the motions while the real evaluation waits for training camp. Every single throw is being cataloged with precision. Every decision is being recorded and cross-referenced and reviewed. The scrutiny operating in those sessions is total and unrelenting. And it is total and unrelenting because the decision is genuinely unresolved and genuinely consequential for the direction of this franchise heading into the fall. What makes this entire situation so resistant to clean narrative packaging is how thoroughly it refuses to cooperate with the easy story. This is not a veteran ascending comfortably to his starting position while the rookie learns patience from the scout team. This is not organizational theater where the front office runs a competition for appearances before rubber stamping an outcome decided months ago in the draft room. The outcome is open. The competition is real, and at the center of it is someone who is somehow managing to do something I find almost technically impossible to sustain in this environment, winning individual battles day after day without making any of it feel like combat, building trust from coaches without visibly campaigning for it, protecting the chemistry of a team while simultaneously trying to take the starting job from the man he shares a facility with. That balance is razor thin at the best of times. Holding it without any visible strain every day in front of cameras and coaches and reporters and teammates, measuring everything constantly, is something I genuinely did not anticipate from a rookie quarterback dropped into this specific situation at this specific moment. I want to be honest about that because I think honesty about what's actually surprising is more valuable than performing certainty I don't possess. The last piece of that press conference that I have not been able to put down completely came when someone asked about his daily preparation, the mental and spiritual side of how he approaches each morning before he sets foot inside that facility. Shedeur said he prays every morning. He listens to different sermons throughout the week. He described it as producing a kind of clarity and internal stability that does not require willpower or active maintenance to sustain, because the foundation underneath it is consistent and solid. Then he said something that genuinely made me pause. He said he barely uses social media anymore. Just locked in. Those 3 words. In an era where personal brand management has quietly become a second career for professional athletes, where maintaining platform presence and content strategy runs parallel to the actual sport, Shedeur Sanders is telling you directly that none of that is where his mental energy is currently directed. It is going into the building, into the film room, into the relationships with coaches and receivers and teammates that he has identified clearly and specifically as the actual foundation of what he is trying to construct. The digital noise that occupies enormous amounts of attention and bandwidth for people at his level is simply not competing for space in his mental architecture right now. Whether that comes from his upbringing, from watching distraction quietly derail other careers from the outside, or from something woven into the deep structure of who he is, the result is identical regardless of the source. A quarterback locked in with a totality that surface-level motivation or external discipline simply cannot manufacture for any sustained period of time. That kind of focus does not live on the surface of a person. It lives somewhere much deeper and much harder to fake across the weeks and months required to build an NFL career. 6 weeks separate these June sessions from the moment training camp opens and pads go on, and the full weight of live contact and real consequence arrives from every direction simultaneously. Everything happening right now in these minicamp practices, the footwork refinement, the rep accumulation, the spiritual grounding, the relationship investment with coaches who genuinely seem to see something worth developing, the competitive fire being constructed inside a roster that appears connected in ways rosters in genuine competition often are not, All of it is foundation architecture for the moment when the real decisions get made. Most casual football fans will not pay attention to any of this until the depth chart is released, and the competition has already quietly resolved itself in one direction or the other. But I'm paying attention now. Based on what these 2 days have shown me, the accuracy numbers, the technical development signals, the press conference answers that came from a person who appears to have already fully resolved the internal questions about who he is and why he is standing in that building, I am completely invested in watching where this goes. Not because of the last name he carries or the cultural storyline that followed him through the draft cycle. Not because of any inherited expectation, because of what I can directly observe right now in real time. He is doing the work, in the right sequence, with the right people, for reasons that feel entirely internal and entirely genuine. And right now, in this specific moment, in a competition that is far more open than the comfortable narrative of veteran experience versus rookie potential wants to acknowledge, Shedeur Sanders is winning the Cleveland Browns quarterback battle one session at a time,